This episode of Point Forward Podcast you're about to listen to was recorded Wednesday, December 7th, prior to the incredible news of Brittany Griner. We are so thankful that Free BG has become finally Freed BG.
That's right, Dre. We're sending her and her family prayers and positivity during this holiday season. Welcome home, BG. And we have a very special guest here today. He's one of the realest journalists in the game right now, a well-respected writer with a few New York Times bestsellers, as well as a brand new book that tells the history of hip-hop. I give you our very special guest, Jonathan Abrams.
Evan and Andre, how you guys doing tonight?
Doing well, brother. How you doing?
Good, man. I really appreciate what you guys are doing on and off the court. You guys continue to pave new ways and make these new grounds for other people to walk through. So kudos to you guys.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. Thanks for giving us your time.
Yeah, of course.
You started at one of the finest journalism programs in the country, which was USC's Annenberg School. How did you, cross that path and, decide you wanted to, do journalism?
I had two loves growing up, Evan. They were sports and writing. And I wasn't going to be a professional athlete, so I went for the writing. And I had a big brother. He played football at USC in the mid-'90s, so I grew up a Trojan. And just the combination of them having a great journalism school and me always loving that school. We're finally back, baby. Finally back.
that transfer, Caleb Williams.
Yeah, pay him some more money.
Yeah, right.
He ain't getting enough.
You would never heard that.
But yeah, it was a great. So I was a freshman at USC during Pete Carroll's first year as coach. So I went to USC during a real fun time.
You were there during the Bush push and all that stuff?
Yeah. My roommate in college, he played in the NFL for a long time. So I was friends with a lot of those people. Mike Patterson, he played for the Eagles and the Giants for a little while. So yeah, I used to play ball with Matt Leinart in college. I used to give him some buckets.
And his kid is a hooper now too. His kid can play ball. His kid's one of the top football players and a pretty good athlete. He's like 6'4", bro.
He got some good genes.
No. Because
not to be gossiping.
Yeah, not to be gossiping, but when you break it down, I mean, you upset now, but 16 years later, you chose right. You know what I mean?
Sound like the catch,
bro. The catch and little homie Swaggy too, bro. Shout out Cameron Leinart. He really eating. I know you eating. Do your thing.
Is he a high school freshman?
He like high school freshman, sophomore. He look like a man. He's marketable too, bro. He the man for real. Not to get off topic, but take us back to what part of going to USC and being around the sports and everything made you want to continue to stick with journalism and find jobs that led you straight to where you're at today.
Well, I got lucky enough where I started at the Los Angeles Times.
Okay.
And I was covering the Clippers for a year before I moved to New York. And the Clippers, they weren't that good of a team at that time. It was a 2007-08 Clippers.
Sean Livingston was there. Was he hurt? Did he get hurt yet?
He was hurt the whole year. So they weren't that good of a team, but the guys they had on the team were really, really good for me to learn from. And I really appreciate having them. They had Elton Brand. They had Sam Cassell. They had Corey Maggette, Katino Mobley, Tim Thomas. I'll never forget one time I was covering a game and Tim Thomas, he put the powder on his hands about to check into a game. And then he dumped like half the bottle onto my laptop and then laughed and checked into the game.
No, hold on. I think we're forgetting something. I think we for some reason, I glossed over this because I know you. We've done some work. You broke my story for coming back to the Warriors. Was that the first comeback? I retired like 8 times. But you covered Donald Sterling's team.
I did.
Did you ever write anything about Donald Sterling?
I was only there for that 1 year and I didn't talk to him or know him that much. I wish I would have because all those rumors were percolating back then. And
did he look racist? No, I'm just joking. I'm sorry.
There was Andre. I think I told you the one story that one of the players had told me about him being weird about players just coming out of the showers. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I could have reported that story at that time. But
Well, that's super interesting because you know, you come straight out of college. I want you to talk to the listeners about that's not normal for a guy to just get a job right straight into the NBA and be with the big boys. So what's that environment like being around the veterans, the David Aldrich, I'm a big fan of David Aldrich, or, some of the other great writers. You got but it's the LA vibes. And so when you're in that arena, when you're in Staples, you get a lot of media coverage. So what's it like as a young writer being in the fold, and how are you being treated? Is it the same as being an NBA player where there's hazing, or you're respected, or is it hard to get relationships? Like, how do you build, who you become today? Like, what was that like at the beginning?
I think I was really fortunate because the elder journalists, the David Aldridge, the Jay Adondes, the Mark Spears, they looked out for me. And, that's something that I'm always fortunate from. And I'm a humble person. I'm humble to this day about everything I do. And I think that I had the right attitude when I came into it, where I didn't think I was better than anybody else because I got lucky and got a good job at a young age. I was just there to work hard and learn from other people who had walked before me. And that's what I tried to do. From the Clippers, you went to the Knicks. Am I correct? Yeah, I was covering the Knicks and the Nets and a little bit of the NBA when I first got to the New York Times. To me, the New York Times, and to ET as well, I think all of us, the production, everyone, our crew, we all understand what it means to be working for the New York Times. Like, I only subscribe to a few things, Financial Times, the Wall Street Journals, the Information, and the New York Times. And for everything to, tech disrupted everything, newspaper publication, but the New York Times has stood the test of time. They just bought The Athletic, correct? They did, yeah. And so, like, that's a big thing. And so what's it like when you get that call that, or did you even apply for the job? Like, how did that whole process work? And then talk to me about, like, what went down and then what you felt when you got the job. Yeah, it's funny because I'll never forget this. So I was visiting New York for the first time ever in my life. And my girlfriend, she became my girlfriend, then she became my wife, but we were visiting New York for the first time. And she was in journalism too. Mm-hmm. And just word got back somehow to somebody she knew at the New York Times that we were in town. And the sports editor at the time called me and asked me to come by the newspaper and just to meet him. And that really set the ball in motion. And I wasn't even looking for a job or think. I'm from the West Coast. Like, I wasn't thinking about leaving the Los Angeles Times at all. Mm-hmm. But that opportunity opened. And we're talking about, people who paved the way and opened doors. And Bill Rhoden, he's a legend in this game. 40 million slaves.
Yep. And we had dinner with him a few months ago. Yeah. Yeah.
And he was still doing his columns at the New York Times. And he really took me under his wing. And listen, like, just come in, like, take away journalism and the New York Times and everything. Just coming from the West Coast to the East Coast for somebody who's lived in California all their lives, that was a huge change. Like the fuck is a subway, Like,
yeah.
Like, why is it so cold all the time? So that was a real big transition. And then walking into an institution like the Times, it took me a while to find my footing, just because, I think at the beginning you're definitely intimidated. And it's something that I try to help younger journalists with today when they first walk through that door, is that, man, forget everything. You're here for a reason. Just do you, and you'll be okay.
That's legit. I want to ask, obviously you kept growing and kept elevating, since your time at USC journalism school. I want to comprehend, like, how you're able to stay successful as a writer, during a time where the field is losing so many people, especially considering you have no TV time and you don't jump on TV or do something and scream and gain popularity like other folks. Like, how have you been able to remain successful?
So I was at the New York Times for a couple of years. I decided to go to Grantland when ESPN was running it. And that was a great time where I was able to do a lot of stuff that interested me as far as features. And, it's when I wrote a story on Andre when I first met him. Mm-hmm. And so during that time, Grantland ended up ending. And then I went to Bleacher Report for a little while. But the thing that stuck in my mind was that it's been a good 5, 6, 7 years since I was at the New York Times. And there's been so much turbulation and changeover in journalism. But a lot of the sports writers who were at the New York Times when I was there the first time, they're still there. And that really, really stuck out to me. And when it came time for me to come back, or when I was asked to come back, that was probably the most prominent thing in my head, was that it almost seems like people are insulated from all this topsy-turviness that's going on in journalism at this paper.
Well, and then you mentioned something, the Grantland was Bill Simmons, correct?
Correct, yeah.
And I don't know if people know the backstory. He got a big deal from ESPN, and he was one of the first ones to kind of go off on his own. He got his own, like ESPN built him his own entity under the ESPN umbrella to go off and build. I guess what I want to ask you is, what did you learn? What have you learned the most from, I guess, each one of your, should I say employers? So we'll go back to the LA Times. Like, what was one of the main things that you learned there? And then we'll go to New York Times, and then we'll go to Grantland, all the way down.
Yeah, that's a good question. I learned that I could do it at the LA Times. I think any type of doubt or hesitation about whether I could operate in a locker room or whether I could write a story on deadline, those evaporated at the LA Times. When I went to New York, it was almost, especially the first stint in New York, it was like kind of a continuation of that, because I wasn't at the Los Angeles Times for too long. At Grantland, I was really interested in writing long form stories and doing oral history type stories. And the great thing about Bill Simmons and Grantland was that it was almost like it was so new that he was really encouraging you to go in your interests and figure out what you wanted to do. And hey, if you fail, we'll pick you up, but you can be successful in doing what you want to do. So it was, if I wanted to write a 5,000 word story about a basketball player, I could. Or if I wanted to write an oral history about this Houston Rockets dynasty in the 80s that should have been but never was, with Ralph Sampson and Hakeem Olajuwon, I could do that. And so that was a really great time. So coming back to the New York Times, it's almost like, okay, let me see this. Let me be at this great institution, and let me have a little bit of seniority, see it from a different level, be more entrenched in this game, to be able to do this, more of the stories that I want to do, and to be able to do it in a way that I want to do, versus me being 24 and at the New York Times.
And now, while you were in New York, where'd you live at?
I lived on 116th of Riverside, so right next to Columbia.
And is that in Harlem?
They call it Morningside Heights over in Columbia.
Riverside, motherfucker. Is that where that's a movie, right? Tupac.
Juice?
Yeah. Juice. It's over there, right?
It is, yeah.
I know
that is a real, I learned something today. I did not know that.
You didn't know that?
Oh, this is one of my favorite episodes already. No, that's dope. Like, I didn't know that was Riverside was by Columbia, which is by even Harlem. I didn't even know Columbia was by Harlem, which is super dope. And what year was that? Like, Harlem's come around. It's changed a bit.
Yeah, the PA. Then the PA originally, the NBA PA originally had our offices in Harlem before we switched.
Yeah, but we would have like drug addicts walking by or sleeping on the stoop. We hear stories about that. But now Harlem's being built up. Marcus Samuelson has Red Rooster, amazing restaurant. Yeah. He's doing his thing there. Billy Hunter was there.
Oh yeah, I do remember that.
And you actually wrote about Billy Hunter.
I did, yeah. Billy. Yeah, Billy, I remember like during the lockout, after one of those long negotiation sessions with Stern, he actually drove me back up to Uptown.
Mm-hmm. What was it like? So what did he drive you in? Was it like a Maybach? Like you were in the back of his Maybach? Or was it a helicopter? Because during that time, he was living good. Like he was living good. Yeah. Yeah, he I was up in that thing. Yeah.
It was a while ago. I'm trying to remember. I'm sure he had a driver, and it wasn't him actually driving whatever he drove.
He definitely had a driver. But I guess, before we jump into, how you've, I don't even know if you call it a transition. But before I say that, what's been one of your more memorable articles in terms of whether it's oral history or, a piece you wrote on a player, non-book? What's been your most memorable article or research that you've done?
There was the first oral history I did was on the Pistons Pacers brawl. And that one I didn't know if I was able to pull off until Steven Jackson. I remember I saw him at a shoot around, and I think he may have even been suspended that night. But
for something else or for that brawl?
No. This was years after. This was like in 2012 or something.
Hold on, time out. ET, did you hear what he just said? He said, I think he might have been suspended, but this is years removed
years
from
later.
The brawl. So what did he learn?
That's what I'm saying. Because it's like, how hard is it? Like, besides, like, how hard is it to not get suspended from the league? Like,
that's
what I'm saying?
That's my guy.
I don't even want to say suspended. I think he was maybe like late for he was late for something that day, so it wasn't even like a league suspended. It wasn't like a big thing.
Same thing. Don't get in trouble again.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But I remember like nobody had wanted to talk about the brawl. And then I was like, man, I'm about to have to give this story up. And then he was in a room. It was at Madison Square Garden. And I heard his voice before I saw him. And he said like, man, somebody's finally about to talk to me about the brawl. Like he sounded like pissed off or something. Like he didn't want to talk about it. But then he ended up like talking like almost until the damn game started about it. And once he talked, I was like, damn, this is going to be an amazing story. And then it opened up after that. And that's been one of my most memorable stories.
So what's something from that you didn't know occurred that just stood out to you? The whole brawl situation, because you see it's on Netflix now. We've been talking about it forever. Obviously the NBA doesn't want it to be. They want it to be put to bed immediately. But it's just such a captivating story, and just the way it happened is just kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, this was way before the Netflix documentary came out, so I think it was just learning the long-term ramifications. Like I didn't know how much it had impacted Meta World Peace, because I watched that. I was at all those 2010 final games, to see that catharsis release afterwards, to really realize how much it stayed with him.
Yeah,
and then also just to think about how much it impacted Jermaine and Jermaine's career going forward, where
because his trajectory was going up.
Yeah, he was a dog.
Jermaine was a franchise player, and he's also incredibly introspective and smart. So just being able to talk to him and rap to him about it and about other stuff as well. Like that's where I like meeting players so much, is not even talking about basketball, but just talking about life. I think that's where me and you connected, Andre, where, and the funny thing is, like, I was just having thoughts approaching this interview, was that I remember I talked to you as you were coming into Golden State, and you were so confident about your decision and about what was about to transpire, to the point where I was like, man, he really has this figured out. I hope he's right.
Yeah.
But man.
For them things.
Yeah, that's big time. That's big time.
I appreciate that. Because, I forgot about it, but at the same time, like, I just played against Stephen Nillman. For me, I just wanted to get back to, like, enjoying basketball. And, like, you just said it, Jonathan and ET, ET and I talk about it all the time. It's your life is so much different when you're enjoying going to work. And we've been in cultures where the culture wasn't to enjoy work. The culture was just come out here and make it look like half decent, compete, and we're going to get our revenue share. Like, that was the environment we were in. Yeah. And so I really wanted to get back to just having fun playing basketball and just seeing Mark Jackson coach. I'm like, listen, worst case scenario, I'm going to enjoy going to work. Yeah. And, watching them young dudes running around, Draymond, Steph, Clay, it was like, all right, I know I can help them, elevate themselves and be great. And hopefully I have. And that's what that conversation was about. I was like, no, bro, I'm about to go out here and have some fun. And I know that the type of player that I am, and it's only good can come from it.
So I want to say something. You guys talked about the connection you had off the, first article that you wrote, but another connection that you have, I want the audience to not lose sight of it, is you both are best-selling authors. And I give you major snaps for that. But Jonathan, I want to hear how you ended up, becoming a big-time author and being able to do it multiple times. You went from journalism to, like you said, writing 5,000 were stories on NBA players? Was it just like, yo, what's next? And you trying to be self-motivated to unlock more doors? Or was it just something that you just stumbled into?
Yeah, I think going hand in hand with always wanting to be a writer, I think I always knew at some point that I wanted to do books as well. And so my first book was on the NBA's whole high school to pro generation of players. And then I felt like I didn't want to be pigeonholed in sports writing. I felt like I had so many other interests. So then I did an oral history on The Wire. And then this latest book is on hip hop's history. And man, I think this thing took years off the back end of my life, but I'm really, really happy with how it came out. It's called The Come Up. And I talked to about 300 different artists, DJs, producers, all about how this genre has basically risen from nothing to permeate every strand of culture, not just in America, but damn near worldwide.
So what's your take on Drake? See how you laugh? You see how you laugh, DT?
What's your take?
Drake,
all right, I want to hear. What's your take, bro?
And Drake is talented, but he's also he's gonna hop on to whatever's hot.
Okay. They say Dre says he's the best actor rapper on earth.
Of all time.
Of all time, it's either him or Childish Gambino, but I understand.
Childish Gambino is a musical artist, bro. Like he plays instruments. Like he comes from like an artist background. Like his parents were like they were having him in museums, bro. Don't do my guy. Like he writes music shows. Don't do Childish like that. Stop. I'm saying he's an actor and he's playing the role of a rapper. Childish Gambino's just like he's Childish Gambino. He's Donald Glover. They're like they're all one and the same. Like they all come together. You know the difference, right?
I understand.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna throw this out because I'm more old schoolish. What about LL Cool J or Will Smith?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I still listen to Lounging and like Doing It and Who Do You like all that. Like, I mean, I'm going LL. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a big LL fan.
That is a really good question because I read Will's book, which is incredible.
Unbelievable.
And he has a lot of depth to him. I just think Will's more of an entertainer.
Yeah.
But I think when he raps, he is who he's rapping. Like when he's rapping, I'm like, oh, that's Will Smith rapping. Like it all makes sense. And the same with LL. Like he's the ladies love Cool J. Like it all went together. And he really did murder some guys. And I'm using a metaphor when I say murder somebody, but like when he went to battle rap, he did his thing.
Yeah, I always talk about the song 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 with like Redman, Method Man, DMX, and like you know what I mean. LL Cool J went on like he had the microphone, everything. I mean, and that was real flowing, like crazy beats, like dudes are really flowing. LL. And DMX and it was LL, and I thought they had like two of the best verses on a song. So you know what I mean?
And he went at Tupac too. Nobody knows that.
Oh yeah, true.
I'm gonna even throw in one more. Queen Latifah.
Oh, I mean, all hail Queen Latifah, bro.
I just ran into her at Starbucks.
Really?
And I like bowed down to her. I was like, and she was like, "You crazy?" But she was like, "I'm playing cool, don't recognize me," but I just paid her respects. And she was like, when she left, she was like, "All right, see you later, babe." Like, you know, respectfully, not like some other stuff, babe, but I paid my respects.
Yeah, no, I love Queen Latifah. She's unbelievable. And then the biggest one is Tupac and rapper, actor Tupac, and you know that's it. It's just Pac.
I think at this point, Pac would have probably been better known as an actor now than a rapper.
Yeah, me too, for sure. Me too, absolutely.
But it's like we're not allowed to say that. But the more and more research I do on Tupac, I have questions, but. He was a very complex individual, but we got to take into account he was only 23, 24. How old was Tupac?
He died at 25. So he did all those movies. Young. He did all those movies, TV shows. He spoke at the Black Indie Expo back in 93 at 23, preaching to a whole bunch of people, talking about what we're talking about now. Like, yo, you can't say that I'm black or I'm this or like I'm a doctor, lawyer. Like, no, we not shit until we own something. He's talking about group economics back then. You know what I'm saying? So. Yeah. Yo, so obviously you have like a wide variety of like interests and everything, and you have no problem researching and writing what you're interested in. Like what's next? You're already in the hooping. You already done passion projects of, The Wire, and you also wrote a hip hop book. Like what you gonna do?
That's honestly something that I'm gonna take the end of the year to try and figure out, Evan, because I love books and I love writing books, but I want to try and see if there's a new medium to try to get quality journalism to people, whether it's looking into trying to do like a narrative podcast or even doing more long form stories at the Times. It's something that definitely keeps me up, not keeps me up at night, but it's been on my mind for a little while, is how to transition to be able to give people quality journalism if people don't consume books like they did, when they didn't have so many other options.
But the bookstores are coming back. I've seen a lot of, but Barnes and Nobles are starting to come back up. Like they're starting to pop up. And I think people are starting to like physical books. So with saying all that, how do we get people more interested in quality over, what's hot right now, which is a 20-second clip. And to have a 20-second clip, you gotta drag somebody in, which is most of the time garbage. And I hate to say it, but like you work for Bleacher Report, and sometimes they irk me with their like just that Barstool Sports headline where it's just like it's not of quality, and it's kind of like killing our brain cells, and it's a byproduct of what's wrong with our youth not having the proper respect. We talk about you like old school hip hop, and we were talking about basketball and how kids like it's not an emphasis on winning anymore. So how do we bring back the true essence of just the arts in general, whether it's writing, whether it's sports, whether it's music, entertainment, whether it's, actual art work. And so, what you're saying in terms of what you want to build, how do you think we get back to that?
It's interesting. I was talking to a hip hop artist who I had talked to for the book, and he was like, listen, like people don't want to know their history. They don't like reading, and they don't like paying for stuff that they typically get for free, right? So that's 3 strikes. Yeah. So how do you combat all that? That's something that needs to be figured out, because one, I just think people need to appreciate their history. And, unless you know what came before you, how do you know what's going to come next, or how can you plan out that way? And just having a respect for people who have paved the way, I think, is important for culture, and it's important to know. And so I don't know whether it's, I'm surprised by how much I enjoy listening to podcasts, considering how much I love reading books. Yeah. But I find that I can consume podcasts, while I'm doing the yard or cleaning up or doing other stuff, which you can't do when doing a book. You need to literally stop doing everything else. And, Andre, basically that's a good question. Yeah. I'm wondering have you guys thought about that?
Yeah. Go ahead, E.T.
No, you gotta go.
No, I'm saying we can both attempt to answer it. I know I can't even get my teammates to read books. Like I throw a couple guys a book, and then I asked one of them the other day. I ain't gonna throw him out there because he's my guy. I said, "Yo, how you like that book I got you?" He said, "Man, I ain't even gonna lie, man. I ain't opened it yet." But I'm trying to like trick them into reading the book, and so. That particular guy, there's a certain thing that, that bothers him. And I said, the book will actually help you get away from that. He was like, oh, yeah. And so I'm just, or like a podcast even. I said, listen to this. Or shout out to Speechify. Speechify is an app I found. And I have a long commute to work. And so I have a podcast I listen to weekly, but then I have the newsletter it's every day. It's a daily newsletter. And so Speechify essentially is a plugin on your browser. And so I'll go to the website of the newsletter, and it'll audio read me the newsletter. And it's like 15 minutes daily. And so I can't get to it because I'm moving it around so much. And by the time I get to it, it's 11 p.m., which is too late for me to consume that news because it's daily. And so I just have Speechify shoot it to me. So now I'm starting to get guys on audio things. So shorter forms, or depending on who it is, I'm like, yo, listen to the book. It'll help you get it. And then I had a few guys do the audio, and that's kind of how I help. But E.T., if you got an answer, I don't know. I can't figure out these kids.
No, honestly, I only do it because it was a long time ago where I made sure I always tried to read something. Like my mentors always say, what are you reading? Because I knew what environment I was going into. So in order to learn, it would be on me. So not saying I'm like the biggest learner, but I know for sure to try to keep my wits of bringing something else to my mind is very important. So I've always tried to keep it to the forefront for the sake of not getting dumber. That's the honest to God truth. That's the honest to God truth. That's really it.
That's
I read it and be
us.
like, yeah. I'm like, bro, let me not get dumber. Like, I need to know what's going on around me for the sake of like just being an accountable adult and everything that was taught growing up to just keep learning more and more.
That's just the realest way you can say it, because I got the fear for being dumb. That's why I read.
Yeah, no, that's real. That's totally real.
You've had a lot of accomplishments as a journalist and as an author, but you have this humbleness to you. Do you ever get in that mode where you're like, I'm that guy, like I'm the man, like I'm him? Everybody, that's the phrase now, like I'm him. And so it's like you're Sasha Fierce is what I call it. And it's like, do you ever feel that? And if you do, when? Is it when you're writing or after?
Honestly, I don't. And I think that's one of the things that I like about myself and I don't like about myself. Because I think at some point it would be cool to feel that way, right? Like it would be cool to be a finals MVP. But at the same
Overrated.
time,
I'm joking. It's amazing.
At that same time, I try to keep that mentality that I can always get better and I could always be better and I can always do it a different, better way. And if I never think of myself as the best, then I can keep climbing. And that's how I always want to be during my career. And that's what I'm trying to teach to my kids. But in saying that, like, it would be cool to feel satisfied every once in a while.
No, like E.T. talks about that a lot. And like sometimes you got to remind yourself. And E.T.'s like, that's probably why he's one of my favorite people on earth, because end of the day, he know who he is, and he's like, I'm one of the illest dudes on earth. And I'm like, why don't I tell myself that more often? Like I think you got to feel like that. And I guess E.T.'s gonna be a guest on the pod one day, and we're gonna dive into that. But we talk a lot about singular moments. But let's talk about Guns and Butter. And Guns and Butter is a segment where it comes from the movie Baby Boy, and Ving Rhames is explaining to Tyrese about, we always look at, there's the assets and there's liabilities, and you got the cars, you got the jewelries, you got this and that, and you get it, and it basically attracts nonsense, and everybody's looking at that and the glamour of it, and that's how you define yourself. But in actuality, it's just things that people don't see: the stocks, the bonds, real estate, art, that's what you're looking for. And it's really the micro decisions that you make throughout life that are just, what Warren Buffett said is the ninth wonder of the world is compound interest. And that's essentially what it is. And so can you recall any small decision you made in your life that you didn't realize at that moment would, kind of change the trajectory of who you become, that stood out to you as you've gotten older and realized like, oh, that small decision really changed my life? I sound like you with that question, didn't I?
Yo, y'all don't realize like how interesting this is to be on the other side of it. Or I'm sure you do.
I didn't think about that. I didn't.
How interesting it is for me, who spent like 15 years of asking you guys questions, to be on the opposite end of it.
Yeah, it's almost like similar to when now I go watch basketball games or like a sporting event. It's like you almost get so giggly and it's so different. It's like, man, this is cool. Like, you know what I'm saying? 'Cause you never get to sit down. You've been playing your whole life, and you go have a beer, cheer, relax, criticize somebody, and somebody's like, yeah, of course,
But I will tell you that having done a few of these books and done press runs for them, that I can really, really appreciate and empathize with you guys of having to go through the same questions over and over and over again. Like, I don't know how so many athletes keep their wits about them and are able to do that. But now that I filibustered my way through that, I have an answer for you. And it would probably be going to USC. I got into North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and it's funny because I live in Charlotte now. But it would have been interesting to see how life would have changed, because that was definitely my big choice. But my mom said hell no when the other thing is that my wife went to FAM, and I do always wonder what type of experience that would have been, because she won't let me hear the end of it. She raves about that all the time, and I do think that would have been a life altering experience.
I agree. I wish I would have at least took a visit. Like if I had to do it all over again and I knew I could have got to the league, I would have went to a HBCU for sure.
Yeah? Oh, man,
if I knew I was going to the league, that's easy.
Bro, I visited, I'm not going to lie to you. I would have either went to USC or Miami, and my mom shut it down. She was like, like when USC called, she was like, they're going to kill you out there. And that's what my mom, bro, she would say that all the time. Or like, yo, Miami called, they're going to kill you out there. And like, so she literally was like, you can't go there. She's like, no, USC is in the middle of the hood. They ain't finna kill my baby. I'm like, God damn, I live in the middle of the hood. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know,
true story.
Like, you got the nerves. You see where the fuck, you know where the fuck we at? Like that type of shit. Yeah.
Wait, would you have played with DeMar?
Yeah, so DeMar, I would have been 07. DeMar would have been 08. I think Swaggy P would have been a couple years before. Like OJ.
You played with Lil Romeo.
Yeah, I would have been with OJ. Yeah, OJ Mayo. OJ Mayo, Daniel Hackett. Remember?
Lil Romeo.
And Lil Romeo, bruh. You're absolutely right. I would have been No Limit Soldier for sure. 1,000%.
I was a senior and Gabe Pruitt and Nick Young were freshmen.
Gabe Pruitt was nice.
Yeah, he was tough.
And I was taking, listen, I knew I was wanting to go into journalism. So I had to fill out the rest of my curriculum with like BS classes. So I took like a weightlifting class my senior year, and Gabe and Nick were in that class. And it was like us and like maybe like 12, 13 other people. And in my head,
weightlifting.
Yeah. In my head, I was like, man, these scrawny people are about to be on the basketball team, but
they could get buckets. They could get buckets. Nick and them get. There's a lot of talent that went through USC. Surprisingly, it seemed like they can never really fully, somewhat get it together consistently. You know what I mean?
But I never heard of this weightlifting. I never heard of a school having a weightlifting class. But I guess if you're a PE major, that makes sense. So I'm not mad at it. I recant my statement. Ain't that what they do?
Yo, so John, do you ever feel as though like everybody's hit the big point? You got guys that want to be in the NBA. You have guys that want to be ultra successful, have everybody in their face, and being in the limelight. And you see the great sides of that and the perks of that. Do you ever feel like you suffered from success in any sense? Like after hitting every goal you want to do, you ever feel like family members are hitting you up too much financially? Do you ever feel like people expect you to have survivor's remorse? Is there anything that you ever look over your shoulder and you're like, damn, maybe I didn't see this coming when I got to this level?
I think, and I'm glad that you brought up survivor's remorse, because I think that's a big thing that's probably not talked about enough in the Black community or just anybody coming out of poverty. Because I know how I grew up, and I know that we didn't have a lot, and to be able to have stuff and be able to not want for anything, you certainly think like, why you at certain times, or how did you get lucky, or why am I so fortunate? That has stuck in my head. And it's almost like, I remember a couple months ago, I did a story on Pat-Man Jones, and I went out to Cincinnati to
that's a good story.
Him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I talked to him a little bit about this, because he had his son, and he was talking about how he grew up versus how his son was growing up, and about like, it's like that line to walk, right? Like, how do you make your child still hungry to have that success that you had, versus wanting to nurture them and protect them and provide for them and give them stuff that you didn't have? And that's a line that I think I'm trying to figure out with my kids right now, because they're too spoiled.
But like when you break down with your kids and everything, you basically have two different jobs. So you work with the Times, and then you have your passion, which is writing books on what you're interested in. Like, do you ever feel like that wears on you? Because you have deadlines and everything to hit, and you have to keep up that consistency. Like, how are you able to juggle it?
Yeah, especially when I was a new parent, right? That was the thing that really stuck with me, is that when I was working, I felt like I should be spending time with my kids or my wife. And, when I was spending time with them, I always had work in my mind. I meditate a lot, and that really helps.
Okay, that's important.
Nice.
I use the Calm app and spend about between 10 and 15 minutes on that every day. That helps get my mindset ready for the day. And then, just realizing that you can't do it all, and to just, be happy and content with where you are at the end of the day, knowing that you did your best.
Yeah, yeah. And I made a face when you said your kids are spoiled. I'm like, aren't they all? But then I'm thinking, well, what's the point of it all if we can't spoil our kids? E.T. always tells me that too.
Yeah. Ball.
But it's the balance.
Let me ask you guys what I talked to Pat Man about. So, because I do really, really have trouble with this because my oldest is 8, and not to put him on blast or anything, but I don't see the hunger in him or the drive that I felt like I had when I was young to want to read or want to do the best and do everything I could.
I think that's boys. Boys are stupid. Because
I
got a 15-year-old son, and I'm like,
yeah.
bro, do you want to be successful? But like not in a mean way, but just sometimes they do really stupid stuff. Like, I'm not talking about my son, but I could be talking about my son, but I got nephews too, and like they forget to put on deodorant, or they forget to brush their teeth, and it's like, what's the point of waking up in the morning if you're not going to take care of yourself? Like, I don't get. Like, boys are dumb. That's my take.
Yeah, with you, and we once were boys, so we can relate. So don't take it too personal if you're hearing it. Yo, so before we get out of here, man, I wanted to be sure to, make sure if there's anybody you had to, give advice from your professional career or the reason why you're here right now. Who is that, and can you tell us why?
Probably Bill Roden, just to bring it back.
Oh, wow,
to him.
okay. Dang, Dre. That's funny, dope. Man. Hey, Dre, you might have to burn a face card then and see if John can, do something.
Let me tell y'all just one quick story to sum up who Bill Roden is. My wife and I were living in New York at the time. She's my fiance at the time. We were getting married in Catalina Island in California. And we had like a little going out party in New York. And I saw Bill Roden because he came, and I was like, Bill, I guess you're not going to be able to come to our wedding. Like, we had sent out the invites months ago. I was like, oh, that's okay. I realize it's a quick haul, or it's a long haul. And he's like, man, what are you talking about? Of course I'm going. And this is maybe a week before the wedding. And he had an RSVP. And so we scrambled to redo the tables. And I'm like, man, how the hell is Bill going to make it to California in this short amount of time? He calls me the morning of my wedding, saying there's no more boats going out from Long Beach to Catalina Island. And I'm like, oh man, Bill, shoot, I'm trying to get ready. All right, I gotta try to talk to you later, figure it out. So meanwhile, an hour and a half later, I walk to my wedding. Who's the first person I see? Is Bill Roden. He took a motherfucking helicopter. He found his own way, took a helicopter from Long Beach to get to Catalina Island. He's the first person I see. That's the type of person he is.
That's crazy, man. Shout out to Bill. Shout out. That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. Thank you. That's unreal. Yeah.
Yo, that's crazy.
Yeah, thank you. That's unreal, man. That's unbelievable. Shout out. We were able to have dinner with Mr. Roden a few months back, and to sit there, talk about a book we read, and to get his insight was unreal. But to hear he's even more of a legit person, and to see somebody you mentored is doing big things is really tells you where you can go when you stay the course. So thank you once again, John. Thanks for your time. Thank you for what you do for the culture, your energy, and thank you for repeating. We really appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you.